Okay, my name is Sandra Queter. I'm a physician who works in the Office of New Drugs in the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research at FDA. I was recently assigned to serve as our center's lead for addressing the full composite of issues surrounding drug shortages, which, as you know, has had increasing public availability and it is an increasing public health problem. The executive order that was issued by President Obama covered several major areas. First, it directed FDA to continue doing the work that we've been doing to try and prevent and mitigate drug shortages. We do that through working with companies, trying to understand the market, understand the lay of the land with manufacturing, and try to assure where there are some problems in manufacturing that there are other sources of product that might be available so that patients don't suffer needlessly. Second thing the executive order did was direct FDA to work with the Department of Justice wherever possible in order to help them stay abreast of what might be illegal activities related to what some people call a gray market of drug distribution. It's a very vague term, but directed us to work with them as well. And the third thing was the executive order requested that, or actually ordered FDA to issue more specific guidance to the pharmaceutical industry about reporting to us where they may have production or other problems related to manufacturing that could result in a drug shortage, so that then we can then circle back to number one and try to help prevent or mitigate any shortages. I think in terms of specifics, I'd start at number three, and that is to be more directive to the industry about reporting potential or existing problems with manufacturing that could lead to a shortage. The day that the executive order was issued, the first thing that we did was we issued a letter to all drug manufacturers that advised them that we are interested in hearing from them about any potential production or supply problem that could result in a shortage of a product to the marketplace. The industry in general is only required by regulation to report potential shortages to us under very narrow circumstances. And those circumstances are when they have made a business decision to stop production of a sole source product. That could be to treat a serious disease. They're required to notify us 6 months in advance where that's possible. That is really the voluntary or business decision discontinuations is a very small portion of the reasons that drug shortages ultimately occur. So we issued this letter, and we are going to be following this up with development of a guidance document to the industry that encourages them to report more broadly to us about situations that they are encountering that they are concerned might result in a drug shortage. So those are the first two things that we'll be doing. You know, when you think about what the reasons are for drug shortages, from the FDA's perspective, we see the more proximate causes of drugs resulting in shortages. There are, and I'll come back to that in a second. Some of the other folks who have studied this, particularly ASPE, the Assistant Secretary for Planning and Evaluation, issued a really interesting companion report to the FDA report that looks at more of some of the economic forces that probably are at the root of some of these shortages. From our standpoint as a regulatory agency, what we see as the causes of these shortages are problems in the manufacturing environment. Most of the shortages that we've been involved with have been for older generic products and in particular sterile injectables. There are only between 5 and 7 manufacturers of these older products, these sterile injectables, in the country. They are, in fact, many of these products only have 1, 2, or 3 manufacturers, despite a very large generic drug industry. The problems that we see are related to production. They have to do with things that are related to being able to maintain older manufacturing facilities. These products are made in facilities that run 24/7, and in order to fix manufacturing problems like water supply, an ability to maintain sterility, they require major investments on the part of these firms that ultimately require them to shut down. Understandably, they're reluctant to do that. It's time without production is money. What we are seeing happening is we're seeing infrastructure problems in the companies, in the plants owned by these companies that ultimately break down. And then we have a shortage situation. So it's really the industry's job to be able to meet the quality standards that have been in place by the FDA for 40 years and have not changed. The whole purpose of FDA is to ensure that the industry maintains quality standards, and in this case related to production, so that the American public and patients can rely on the products that they purchase. Our job is to assure that they are doing their job. You know, I think the whole issue of gray market and the gray market stockpilers is one that there is not a lot known about. Most of the reports about the gray market are anecdotal. We absolutely know that they exist. They're often secondary wholesalers that purchase product from a variety of sources and turn it around and resell it. Many times the practices that they engage in are within the limits of the law. From our viewpoint, we have concerns that sometimes where a gray market for a particular product is reported frequently, we start to worry about things like counterfeiting, that may be operative, or illegal importations of product that doesn't meet U.S. quality standards. So it's a complicated issue. We don't have direct ways of knowing about specifics other than anecdotally, often long after the events have occurred, but we're going to be working with the Justice Department to try and put together a plan to sort of focus our ability to understand that and develop a way that the public and we, as we hear about these, can bring them to the Department of Justice's attention more directly. I think a lot of the attention in drug shortages has focused on oncology and the sterile injectable generic oncology products. Equally as important are sterile injectables and products that aren't sterile injectables in many other fields. And in fact, oncology is just one portion of the shortage problem that we're seeing. We see the same thing, the same shortage problem for sterile injectable drugs that are used in anesthesia, or antibiotics and even neurology products. What's interesting is if you read the ASPE report, in fact, the demand for these products has actually increased, not decreased. So I think we have to be careful about ascribing the shortage situation to being as simple as just reimbursement. Some of the challenges that the ASPE report outlines quite well are that the way these products, particularly generics, are purchased, there are group purchasing agreements. CMS is one of them, but private health insurance industry is just as much a part of these large purchasing agreements. They purchase from wholesalers multiple products at fixed prices that are in place, guaranteed to be in place for a year or longer, with very, very limited clauses for non-availability. So there is no penalty for non-availability of particular products. I think, there is a very complex set of circumstances that certainly reimbursement is a part of, but I think we should be careful to assume that that's the only economic force that's at play, particularly when the ASPE report outlines quite interestingly how demand has actually increased, exactly the opposite of what one might think. What FDA is going to be doing, and is already doing with regard to drug shortages, is we have already put the industry on notice that we want to hear about what their production challenges are in advance so that we can identify alternative sources of drug, work with other manufacturers to ramp up supply, or work with the companies themselves to fix any infrastructure problems that they have quickly in order to avoid a shortage in the first place. We've avoided 100 shortages so far in 2011. That's a lot of shortages that never made it to the list because they didn't happen. So in order to do that, we'll be issuing guidance to the industry on what we would like to know about, and so that they can know what we will do with the information that they provide. We are also working with congressional staff as they contemplate whether any additional legislation would be helpful in this case. There are several bills that have been proposed. We are also increasing our staffing immediately in the area of our drug shortages program to be able to more methodically track situations that are resulting in shortages and work with companies as well as our own staff to monitor shortages and get things turned around as quickly as possible. In that light, one of our biggest jobs is to look at how we oversee the manufacturing processes and work with our field staff and our Office of Compliance to be sure that where there is a proposal by a company to alter its practices in order to mitigate a shortage, we are in there with them looking at their proposed plan and pulling it out of the usual queue for review and FDA approval.